25 minutes before 10 o'clock. I am so interested in the next topic, Robin. When I was much younger, I met a guy who said he was a psychic, and I have no reason to believe he wasn't a psychic. And he had told me that you can do anything with your mind. You can elevate your brain with meditation, with techniques, etc., so that you can do anything. He said all information that is in the world is available to you through your mind. This was before the internet, by the way. And I remember I was stuck, and I'm not a mechanic, as everybody knows, but I remember I was driving my car, and I was all of a sudden the car just stopped working. I was on this long road that had miles behind me and miles ahead of me, and there wasn't anybody around. And I think I had a butter knife or maybe a screwdriver, who knows? Anyway, so I thought about his statement. I thought, well, maybe I could figure this out. If I have contact with all knowledge, maybe I can. Yes. And you know what? I don't even remember how I did it, what I did it, but I fixed it. I remember it boiled down to this little fuel filter that was clogged up. Mm-hmm. I have no idea if I tapped into something like at that moment or not. In the song "Calling Occupants" by Klaatu, which is
I love that
goes
song.
back into the 70s. Yeah, but the opening line is, "In your mind, you have capacity to form and transmit thought energy far beyond the norm." And of course, in their song, they're talking about communicating with extraterrestrials. And then Mr. Spock, the Leonard Nimoy character. Leonard Nimoy just died.
Yeah.
But his character was supposedly from a planet or whatever where their brains had developed beyond ours, and ours will get there eventually one day. We've always heard this, right?
Yes.
Well, maybe that day is here. Maybe we've had people even in history who've tapped into something, and maybe it's not something in the future. Maybe it's something right now. There is something we're going to talk about called higher brain living. Mm-hmm. Higher brain living. Zach Polsfuss is on the phone. I hope I'm saying his name right. He's an advanced higher brain living facilitator. He's the owner of the Awaken Higher Brain Living Center. And there's actually an event, I think you said in Fort Lauderdale.
Yes.
We can see this firsthand, so we're going to learn everything we need to know, well, 20 minutes worth anyway, right now, including how to learn more, which is always the important part. Zach Polsfuss. Good morning, Zach.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
My first question is, how did I pronounce your name? And did I do okay?
Yep, the first S is silent. It is Polsfuss.
Polsfuss, okay. And where are you right now?
I'm in Chicago.
Have we spoken before?
We have not.
Okay, I wasn't sure. So everything I said in the intro, am I on the right track? Is that sort of what this is leading to?
Definitely. The outcomes may be different for us. Those may be a little bit in the fantasy realm or not. There's a lot of untapped latent potential in our brain that we're currently not using. And higher brain living really allows you to tap into that part of your brain that you're using the least right now.
So if I tap into it for my own health, I can almost understand that better than if I tap into it to fix my car. because of my own health, it's like my body would communicate with my brain, and maybe I would understand something. But something external like a car or somebody else's health, it doesn't seem to make sense. But does it? I mean, is that what we can do?
Well, let me start by describing what this technique is.
Okay.
And kind of basically what it is it's a gentle touch technique done on the body that causes a surge of energy, blood flow, and metabolism to go to the prefrontal cortex of the brain. We refer to that part of the brain as the higher brain. Now, the reason that part of the brain is so important is that it's the least used portion of our brain currently, and it's responsible for our highest states of being and access to the highest levels of consciousness that we can access as human beings. And so people who go through the higher brain living process, we turn on their higher brain, and they literally awaken to an entirely new level of being and perspective and level of consciousness that becomes a permanent and sustainable state.
So okay. I'm hopefully I'm grasping it somewhat. If we go into a higher level, do we become more peaceful? Like could a bad guy, a Hitler or an ISIS person, could they tap into this and make themselves even worse? Or once we reach that higher level, do we suddenly have a better understanding of what we need to be doing that is the right stuff? I mean, how do we change as people?
Right. That's a really good question. This part of your brain is linked with the act of insight. It's also linked with high states of consciousness. And when I say that, I mean high states like enlightenment, the classical enlightenment experience we've all read about,
right,
and that people hit. It's linked to that part of the brain. It's also linked to your innate health and your innate wisdom. And so what we have found when we track our clients' progress as this part of their brain is turning on more and more is that it's only beneficial and positive life change that happens for them. It's a way to put it in layman's terms is imagine you've navigated your whole life from standing on the ground and you can see as far as you can. And so you make your decisions based on that perspective. Well, when we put people in the higher brain, it's like going up 10,000 feet in a helicopter. You can see much, much further and make much more accurate decisions on the way you're going to navigate your life. And so that's similar to what higher brain living is.
Wow.
When we were very little, when we were children, if somebody was to ask you, what do you want, your answer would be different than it would be as an adult, obviously. And I'm guessing as an adult, with the lower brain, just to kind of help me explain what my question is here, our desires might be different than with the higher brain. But with that said, I'm assuming somebody who wants to take this course has a desire, something that they want to improve. Maybe it's their memory, maybe it's their relationships, maybe it's their health. So there's a double question here. The first question is, what kind of things are people going to higher brain living sessions for? And do those desires change once they've reached that higher brain living?
That's a really good question. So first, higher brain living is not positioned as a healing or therapeutic modality. It is positioned as a personal growth and transformation system. The reason for that is because we're not doctors. We're not going to make medical claims. People aren't coming into my center saying, I have a bad back. Can you fix that? You know what I mean? Now, that being said, when we focus people on high states of consciousness and we focus them on who they really are and what they're meant to do and be in the world, and they start to shift their level of consciousness, it has massive healing and therapeutic benefits. We just don't focus on those. Those are more of the periphery of what this work does. Now, to answer your second question, do their desires or their wants when they come in change as they wake up, so to speak?
Yeah.
And that absolutely happens. People will come in because we have a certain level of education on what higher brain living is when we come in. And then we get the sessions and we start feeling our higher consciousness kick in and our higher brain turn on. And it affords us levels of access to wisdom and understanding and clarity that we were not able to access before. Yeah. And so from those states, you're just able to see a much more expansive view. And so let's say from your perspective on the ground, you were in front of a river and your entire life you just wanted to figure out how to get across that river. So you've been practicing swimming your whole life to figure out how to get across that river. Well, then you go into your higher brain, you go 10,000 feet up in the air, and you can see real far down that river, oh, there's a bridge down there. And then, so now, are you going to keep trying to swim over and over, or are you going to walk down to the bridge?
Good analogy.
So very interesting.
Really good analogy. Now, earlier you mentioned something about helping people to become what they were meant to be. Now, that there's a spiritual element to that statement, because what we're meant to be, you could say was ordained by God, by nature, by whatever. So if there is a spiritual element to all of us, the more we progress, then obviously the wiser we get, and hopefully that would mean the more peaceful we get, I would think. I mean, it seems that way. I mean, when Einstein discovered the formula that would eventually lead to the atomic bomb, his biggest fear was that it would be used for wrong purposes.
Right. Yes, you're on the right track. When people turn on their higher brain, when we turn their higher brain on and it starts to become a lifestyle and we're shifting brain dominance out of that lower brain into the higher brain, common testimonials that come from people is that they have heightened states of peace. Stress is vastly lowered or completely gone, eradicated. Fear, and especially existential fear, completely goes away. The fear of death goes away in people. It's very, very interesting.
Your own as well as
our results.
Your own death as well as other people's deaths?
Well, it's more your own, that just underpinned existential fear. That one goes away. That infects all the other realms.
One of the interesting things about in the paperwork, and we'll continue this after the break, but one of the interesting things is there was a study done at the University of Wisconsin that gave some tangible, readable results. So this isn't just talk. And I want you to explain what those tests were. We need to take a little break, and we'll be right back. What a fascinating topic this is. Zach Polsfuss is on the phone. Where are you right now? Did I ask you that? Where are you?
Yeah, I'm in Chicago doing one of the presentations.
Okay.
Yeah, that I'm going to be doing down there.
Okay. And I also need to tell you that this segment of AM Ocala Live is brought to you in part by Dr. Thomas L. Crowley. He's a board-certified ophthalmologist. I need a higher brain just to read words. He is at the Central Florida Eye Institute, located at 3133 Southwest 32nd Avenue, across from the Paddock Mall on the Sears side. Contact them at 237-8400, the Central Florida Eye Institute with Dr. Thomas Crowley. Thank them for sponsoring AM Ocala Live as well. So we'll take our little break, and we'll be right back with this fascinating topic Zach Polsfuss is bringing us. We'll be right back.
Central Florida Eye Institute is the area's leader in laser vision correction. From high-definition refraction surgery and LASIK vision correction to custom cataract, glaucoma, and diabetic treatment, you can count on Dr. Crowley and his effective, friendly staff to provide you with the quality care you deserve. Call 352-237-8400 for an appointment or more information. That number again is 352-237-8400. Looking forward to service your vision needs.
That was the sound of a tree falling. It could be your tree. You're going to have it trimmed, but never got around to calling Pride Tree Service. It could have fallen in a field, and now all you have to do is call Pride Tree Service, and they'll have it quickly out of the way for a great price. But don't wait until the tree falls. It may not fall in the field. It may hit your car, your house, or worse. So call Pride Tree Service today and avoid all those headaches before they happen. Pride Tree Service, 840-0750. That's 840-0750.
Let's give it up for old asphalt and a new pair of shoes. Let's give it up for a good rhythm meeting a sweet melody. For a church cookout under clear skies. Let's give it up for good things coming together, like bundling your auto and other policies together with an Allstate agent, which can save you time and keep you better protected. Let's give it up for good.
To receive your comparative insurance quote, contact the McDonald Agency at 622-2333.
Are you tired of looking through glasses with scratched lenses? Or are your frames a little dated? Well, Ocala Eye is offering a sweetheart special that can solve that problem today. Now, through the end of February, Ocala Eye is celebrating Valentine's Day every day by knocking $100 off on any complete pair of frames and lenses purchased from any of Ocala Eye's 5 locations, including the Villages. Pick from hundreds of designer frames like Kate Spade, Coach, Vera Wang, Maui Jim, and more. Then apply the Ocala Eye Sweetheart Special and knock $100 off whatever the cost. And if you live in the Villages, don't miss our optical trunk show at our office on Laurel Manor Drive on Saturday, February 28th. For more information, go to ocalaeye.com. Trusted doctors and proven technology. Just another way Ocala Eye is looking out for you.
All right, 10 minutes before 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Zach Polsfuss is on the phone. There's actually an opportunity for you to find out a lot more about the higher brain living concept, not only online, but there's an event happening down in Fort Lauderdale on March 16th, it says here, which is a Monday evening. Zach, one of the things I want to tell you real quickly that I've thought about a lot is that in this lifetime, it seems like the way we can make a living, actually provide for ourselves, is not always in line with things that make us wiser. And I know that that's not exactly true. I just watched the box fall outside, so got distracted. I'm sorry, but it seems like we have to be specialists, and when you are a specialist, you focus all of your learning on one thing, whatever that one thing is, and then you almost only have room in the day to learn about a few other things, maybe things you like your favorite sports team or your favorite band or your favorite TV shows or things like that, and most other things are kind of out of your realm. You know, you sort of watch the news and you skim, and the knowledge you have, and wisdom seems to come from mistakes and bad things. Actually, does this higher living thing? Do you actually gain wisdom without that experience? Those experiences of mistakes, etc.
Yes, I mean, that's an interesting question. I've never been asked that. Well, because I did bring up wisdom earlier. The kind of wisdom I'm talking about is the innate wisdom. It's the wisdom that kind of birthed forth existence to begin with. It's the wisdom that knew you needed a prefrontal cortex. It's the wisdom. Another way to explain it is there's a formless dimension of ourselves that we all know exists, and a lot of the meditative traditions and different modalities out there are trying to get us to be in touch with that formless, beautiful, peace-loving dimension of ourselves. Well, that dimension itself has innate wisdom or innate knowing in it. And as you plunge into that experience or turn on the part of the brain responsible for understanding and experiencing that part of yourself, you start to become imbued with this wisdom and this knowing. And it just comes from an eternal place, is the way I can describe it.
There is emotion involved also when a person makes decisions. How does the person keep themselves from being jaded from the emotional aspect when it should be from the critical thinking aspect?
Well, that's a good question, and I think how I'm going to answer that is that leads back to actually the lower brain. The lower brain, or the survival portion of our brain, is the first part of our brain to ever develop, and it developed a very long time ago, and it became very, very adept at keeping us alive, and that's really all it cares about. And so what it does is it tries to recreate patterns in your life, because to that part of your brain, sameness equals safety. And so it wants to play out exactly what you did yesterday, whether it served you or not, because you are alive today. And so it said, all right, success, duplicate that. And it says duplicate it over and over and over and over and over. And so when we have reaction, this is also the reactionary brain. When we have reaction or emotional response or negative thinking or things that don't evolve us, that don't help us become in some way, they're by default linked to the lower brain's thinking and the lower brain strategies of that part. And so what's really fascinating about the higher brain living process and technique is that it not only turns on the prefrontal cortex of the brain, but it also releases the hold of that lower brain. So you can move out of reaction. And one last thing I'll say is that lower brain operates on rationality. The prefrontal cortex, or the higher brain, operates in trans-rational modes of knowing. And so another way to put that is the lower brain thinks in linear thinking. The higher brain thinks in insight, which is not linear. Insight is a burst of knowing.
Oh, wow.
Out of, right? We've all experienced
I love
insight.
what you just said. Do you know an observation I've made? I believe in God just so that I get that understood. Not that you need to understand that, but even if I change the word God to nature, it would still be true what I'm going to tell you. There are no straight lines in nature. There are no straight lines drawn by God. Everything's ragged or circular or something. Everything that has a straight line is man-made. which is interesting.
Right.
All buildings, all bridges, they're all straight lines, all roads. I mean, we have circles, but every leaf is a ragged thing. Even the horizon isn't straight. You know, if I was in a circumstance where somebody comes into my house with a gun and they're going to kill me, or I could kill them, it seems like the lower brain would say, well, logically, I should kill them. The higher brain would say, no, let him kill you. Is that accurate?
That I don't know there, because I've never been in that situation. But what I do know is nature never abandons a good idea. And so when we say we're shifting brain dominance into the prefrontal cortex, we are not saying that we're shutting off the lower brain. What we are saying is that nature transcends and includes the fundamental features of what worked before. And so an example of that is the molecule transcends but includes the atom. The cell transcends but includes the molecule and the atom. So if the atom were removed, the entire system would fall apart.
Okay,
so
that
the
makes sense.
perspective that you gain through this is that brain dominance now by default is in the prefrontal cortex, but you still have your survival instincts and you still have that. It just doesn't control the show anymore. You are not victimized by it.
So just to illustrate, and I did kind of give this tease before the break, and we're so much out of time already, but there was a piece in the information that was sent to me about some monks that were studied at the University of Wisconsin.
Yes.
What happened there?
Yes, the Dalai Lama hand-selected a group of meditators from the Tibetan tradition, which is one of the highest forms of meditation on the planet. And he brought them to the University of Wisconsin and hooked them up to EEG and functional MRI because he wanted to see what was happening in their brain when they hit these enlightenment-type states. And so these monks would go into these high states of consciousness, and what they found was there was a complete shift in dominance to the prefrontal cortex of the brain. Very high EEG signatures, way above the norm in the prefrontal cortex. So what they found is that high states of consciousness and or the apprehension of the enlightenment experience is intrinsically linked to the biology of the prefrontal cortex of the brain. And so what with higher brain living, with the EEG research we've been doing on our clients, we're finding an almost identical EEG signature in the prefrontal cortex. Now the kicker is that those monks, it took an average of 30 years at 4 hours a day to hit those EEG signatures or states. With us, it takes just under 22 weeks of going through a higher brain living process to get that same result in the brain.
Oh, wow. So you've witnessed people actually becoming more monk-like?
I wouldn't say monk-like, but have we had a handful of clients in the past 2 to 3 years, because this is very new, which will lead me into what I want to talk about next before we end. Have we had a few hit full-blown enlightenment experiences that we've all read about? Yes.
Wow. Yeah, you have a lot of testimonials on the paperwork. We've got 1 minute. Zach,
Yep.
we don't have a lot of time. Give us whatever information we need so we can look further.
Yep. I'm doing an event down in Fort Lauderdale on Monday, March 16th, where you'll learn everything about higher brain living. You'll see 2 live demonstrations on actual clients, and then you'll learn about our training program, because currently there are less than 200 of us in the entire world doing this work. One of the highest goals of higher brain living is to facilitate a shift in global consciousness by lighting up the part of the brain responsible for that consciousness. So if you're interested in attending this event, please go to higherbrainlivingevents.com/Florida and register, and it'll have all the information.
higherbrainlivingevents.com/Florida.
Florida, correct.
Zach, this is so fascinating to me. I hope I get to one of these events one of these days. I won't be able to get to this one. Thank you so much for being on the air with us today.
Thanks, it was a pleasure.
That was great. We'll be right back.
Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Pat O'Neill. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu speaks to Congress tomorrow, stating his case against any nuclear deal with Iran. Secretary of State John Kerry concerned about reports some details of the talks could come out.
I want to say clearly that doing so would make it more difficult to reach the goal that Israel and